Benvenuto a tutti, bienvenido, welcome, croeso for that matter. It's a real pleasure to welcome everyone to Magdalene College this afternoon for the presentation of a very remarkable book, Father William's Disarming Beauty. And what we shall do this afternoon is to listen to a brief introduction from Father William about the book. We shall then talk a little bit about some of the themes and hope to have time for questions and comment from this very large audience. And we're particularly glad to see so many here today to engage in what I think will be a conversation on really substantive issues about our witness in contemporary society. It's a great pleasure and an honor to welcome you, Father, to Cambridge and to our college. It's been a privilege to get to know you a little over recent years, to read what you've written, to see how sharp and perceptive a critical voice you bring to our culture in the name of Christ and Christ's Church. And so without more ado, let me invite you to say a little bit about the book, about the themes which you most want people to hear in it, and we'll see what we have to talk about after that.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be with all of you this afternoon. I am very grateful to Dr. Rowan Williams for our friendship and for this invitation to talk about things that are part of our life. For me, the most precious thing that I have. There was no idea to publish a new book. I didn't have any interest to publish the book. In reality, it was the editing house that was pressing me for years, but I don't have any need to increase my bibliography. I was resistant to this kind of, but in a moment when I started to see what was happening in our culture, or in Europe, with different challenges in all the issues that we were facing, in such a moment I asked myself if Christianity has something to offer in this particular context, historical context. If there is something that can be offered as a help, first of all, to understand what was happening. Because I think this is one of the most important, the most important step, first step, to understand how can we deal with the whole picture of the contest. The first chapter was devoted to this issue. What is happening in our culture with this change of epoch, according to the expression of the Pope, this change in our culture that we can see in the daily life, in which it's difficult to meet somebody in which we can share the value that years ago, not so many years ago, were so self-evident before everybody. And now everything from the politics or to the ethics, other political issues are always the occasion for a big discussion in which it's difficult to understand each other. No? Who can imagine almost some decades ago that we can again, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, to dream, to work another world in Europe. Was something that it could be unbelievable only 30 years ago. This is a simple example. We were so happy to destroy the wall that can separate us from one another. And after some decades, we are dreaming to walk the walks, another walks, because of the immigration problem. So, this is, we can say this, we can speak about terrorism, we can speak about the debate of new rights, we can about ethics issues. In every country, when we cannot discuss about euthanasia, we can speak about abortion, we can speak about issues that always arise big discussion among us. So, what is happening? The first thing that we need to face is what is happening. What is the reason for this collapse of, we can say, things that we shared for centuries at that moment in a in a short period of time, everything is collapsing. And I think it's very important issue for us to understand it, because otherwise it's difficult to offer a contribution that can be adequate to the nature of the collapse. Because we have lived in Europe from the last centuries a lot of change, a lot of even wars or industrial revolution, but there is, in that moment, there is like a common background, even in this, with these challenges. But now this is what is collapsing. So what is happening? Because otherwise we can try to answer to this collapse with the same thing that had been failed. Because we need to understand what is the real nature of a crisis. And I am very happy to have found in this reflection a quotation of Hannah Arendt that a crisis is a good possibility, because it forces us to understand better what is happening and stress that to rethink the thing we thought that were clear enough. And it's a possibility to understand better what is happening and what is the answer to this. Because we cannot keep going with the same habits or the same way of thinking, way of approaching reality that is at the origin of this collapse. So Christianity in that particular moment can be offered something, and I am convinced that Christianity can offer a new beginning for this. But we need to understand that Christianity is not that reduction that many times Christianity has become, like for many people, for many contemporary of us, Christianity is only a set of rules and ethics, according to the Kantian reduction of Christianity. For others, only a feeling. For others, is a kind of habit of culture or some religious issue. But this forces to all of us that share the same faith, Christian faith, or for others, what is the nature of Christianity? This is not taken for granted. Because many times people don't like or don't be interested in Christianity because this kind of reduction is not enough to be interesting for them. And this is our problem. What is Christianity about? But even in that secularized world, what is happening? Why many families, many parents are not able to convey faith to their children? That is really a problem of the daily life. Why the teachers are not able to convey to the students, or the church cannot offer a Christianity in such a way that can be interesting for them, as we can see in the lack of vocation. These are issues that are before us. And this is an opportunity to rethink what is about Christianity, and what is the way that we need to offer this Christianity in this particular moment, because otherwise Christianity is something from the past that is not enough to keep being interesting for others. For me, this is crucial because it's the possibility of seeing that Christianity can be useful to reveal reason, freedom, affection, all these kind of things that are many times separate one from another, and there is a possibility of reveal a unity of the eye that can be surprised by what Christianity is about. For the reason, this, the second part of my book is to face this important issue: what is the relation to Christianity with the most important part of human being: reason, freedom, affection, and education. Another important part of the book, because in that particular moment there is a particular challenge from the society, from Western world, if we are able to convey some kind of meaning as a sense of life for the new generation. It's not enough to have been born in a society like England or Italy or Spain to convey Christian faith as a meaning of life. We can see the problem in the young people, the problem in the society, the problem with the violence in the relationship, in the personal level, in the social level. There is difficult. There is no certainty. What is the relationship with certainty and possibility of educating? Is certainty something that is against freedom, or certainty is a means for freedom? All these kind of issues that can be only solved if we can deepen what is the nature of freedom, what is the nature of certainty, what is the possibility of offering truth without perceive this offering like something that can mean freedom. That is one of the most important gifts that we have received as a human being. And afterwards, some kind of issues that I face in the book, family or politics, or finishing with attempt of offering a kind of contribution. How can we offer in Christianity today in this particular world? This is the key of my way of thinking.
Thank you very much indeed for that sketch of the book's purpose and scope. The thing which struck me most as I read it, I think, was the focus on an educational crisis. If we have an educational crisis, it means we no longer know what we want to transmit that is of value, that is worth believing. And so we end up with an education which is simply the transmission of information.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years ago, there was a government paper on education, which was, like most of its kind, almost unreadable. But what struck me most was the complete absence in the entire discussion of words like meaning or joy. Now, the notion that learning has something to do with joy seems to me fundamental for our humanity. And so when you write about the current crisis in education, I think your phrase is an educational emergency. That's where I found the most resonance as I read the book. The emergency is that we have an educational system which no longer knows what kind of humanity it wishes to nourish, which no longer takes seriously the idea that truth is something which fulfills and enlarges and makes us joyful.
Mm-hmm.
And thus you end up with a mechanical process of transmitting facts and skills, which not surprisingly leads to boredom.
Mm-hmm.
Boredom is a word you use many times in this
Mm-hmm.
book, and I think that is fundamentally important for understanding the issue. So, as we think about that educational emergency, how do you think we persuade society to think again about how it understands the very idea of knowledge? Because that's the root problem.
Do you think that the only way of convincing society, convincing every person, because at the end society is only every one of us, is that the event, the knowledge is an event? Because I am always surprised that the mystery, let's say, to introduces us to some important issue. Instead of explaining us with a book, he makes the issue happen in our life. Love. Instead of offering a course in a university about love, he makes us born in a family, or happens a friendship, or we fall in love. It's not something that we can introduce to only with a lecture. There is no way of conveying what is the meaning of love without this event of being loved, of being introduced to love. So, because whatever other way of conveying this issue is not enough to grasp the whole humanity. Only in experience is the humanity completely present to the knowledge we have to learn. Is all our eye is attractive, no, for this issue. So we can say about love, we can say about freedom, we can say about science, we can say about everything. Only when knowledge is something that happens, we can be attractive, we can be, we can enjoy. From the beginning, when the Greek discover something and go away from the bath, saying Eureka, Eureka, it was the expression of a joy of the discovery. Knowledge for him was a joy. There is no possibility of understanding something, of happening something like an event, like a knowledge, without it being related with joy. But many times, the way we are being introduced into knowledge is not a joy, but something that we have to force somebody to learn. It not be attractive, the way in which many people offer. And this is the reason because many students have no interest for the transmission or some kind of data, some kind of information. Information is not enough to be to reawaken the eye, because the eye is a unity, and only if all the eye can be reawakened before something can be interested. And this is one of the most important issues, I think, that is happening. What is happening in the eye? Because many people are not interested. I always done an example of this because if there are 25 young who have a big desire of learning science, there are 1,000 of teachers ready for them to introduce to science. But the question is that there is no these 25 people waiting for this. We need at the same time that we arrive in a house, in a class, we need to reawaken the interest for the issue we are trying to explain. And this is part of our task as a teacher. And if we are not able to reawaken the eye at the same time that we are trying to convey the issue, the lack of interest is so big that people after a while are disconnecting of following the explanation of the teacher. So, what is happening? This is part of the emergency of education. It's not, you say, Father Yusani explained years ago with an expression that I like a lot, because he said that is happening something that is not a problem of, we can say, a lot of ethics or a problem of ethics in the young people. It's a problem of lack of awareness. And this lack of awareness of themselves can be only reawakened in an encounter with the teacher, with the authority, with the person is trying to introduce them to this. This is this weakness of awareness that is in crisis. When we don't understand this, and we try to to add rules to put the students in the house, order in the classes room, etc. It's impossible, because it's not enough to be interested for the student. Only the rules are not able to reawaken the joy. And in this society, we can see that all the education system are trying to increase the rules, to put the walls in the house, in the classroom, to maintain students in a certain order. But the violence is very widespread. We can see in every place. And the difficult for them to be happy with themselves is really a problem. So we have a real epoch challenge before us. As a society, it's not a problem of the church, not a problem of the student, not a problem of the teacher. As a society, the quality is related to everybody. Can we convey some kind of certainty, some kind of meaning of life that can be interesting for them, or we are not able to convey something as a part of our experience that can be interesting as a meaning of life? This is one of the most important tasks that we are before us.
Two or three things come to mind as I listen to that. One is what you said about how we learn love not by learning the word, but by being born. In other words, we are always receiving that which we need to grow and to live. Life is only given to us in that relatedness. And the myth that some people try to live by is that our life can be possessed, can be ordered by the will, not received. And that's one of the keys. But it made me think also of the words of Christ, I am the way, the truth, and the life. We cannot imagine Christ as truth without believing in Christ as life giver. And that's why waking up the hunger to live, which involves joy and all those other things, that's the educational task. So that places a great responsibility on the teacher to show his or her engagement with, dependence on truth. When you see a teacher who is gazing, absorbed, delighted at what they're teaching about, and just turns sideways and says, look at this. That's completely different from saying, all right, write this down. And the teacher who can say, look at this, so that our attention is drawn where their attention is drawn. That's, to my mind, that's also why the contemplative in the church is so often the one who attracts the outsider. It seems the most exotic and strange thing that some people spend their lives gazing into the mystery of God and nothing else. But that's what they're doing. They're saying, look at this. This is worthwhile beyond anything we can say. And so it's so strange that sometimes we regard the contemplative life of the church as eccentric and a bit on the edge, whereas it's the heart of what we seek to convey sometimes, isn't it? And it's this truth and beauty linkage, truth and life linkage, which again is at the heart of what you're talking about. Understanding that the truth we profess as Christians is a truth always personal, always transforming. We can't know it without being changed by it. And I think We can't know without being changed.
This is crucial. I am very happy to listen to you this link, because this is part of the history of salvation. Because we were from the beginning depending of another one, of the Creator. But all that is the God's design was to convince people that we are dependent. Because it was clear that we are unable to create all the things and to create ourselves. We are the reality, and ourselves, we are dependent. But in the history, we live like we are possessing reality. No? So what for me is challenge, what is the way in which we need to look at the history of the people of Israel and afterward the Christian people, that we can learn from the way in which the mystery, God, and afterwards God incarnate in Christ, has developed to convey us to this truth and to accept independence is not a slavery, but a freedom. And this is really what is amazing, because only with this kind of love, again and again, even in every situation, rebellion of people, even when they don't understand, even when they refuse this love, God keeps offering again and again another sign of his love for people. And it's amazing because all the history shows us what is the method in which God has been engaged in this kind of transmission, because it's not only from the balcony as a teacher, but always being more closest to the humanity, to become incarnate, putting in front of front of us some incarnate truth that can be so attractive that they remain speechless. Never we have seen something like this. So only in the encounter with the incarnate word, on the incarnate truth, can we recognize what is the nature of the truth. That for many, for us, that we are Europeans, that means intellectualistic mind. But only this is not enough. We can have this big institution. But now, if we have lost the link with the origin of this kind of institution, little by little, become more clear that it's not enough, the institution, to convey this, because without the link with the origin, with the living origin that can reawaken, to refresh the origin and to convey this as a part of our life, changing by this relationship with the origin, is impossible. And this is a challenge if we are able to learn from our experience that without conversion of us, it's impossible to convey. And this is, I think, very, very challenging moment for us, because what is self-evident now is that without being engaged with the journey we are trying to offer them, it's impossible to offer them. So only a parent or a teacher or a priest, if is not engaged with the same issue that he has to convey, is not trustworthy for people. Because only if I can see what does mean for him, can be incarnate this truth in him, only in such a way I can be attracted enough to follow him. And this is important, because authority means something that makes us grow. So authority is the possibility of meeting people, of meeting teachers, or parents, or priests, or whatever, that make us grow in awareness, in joy, in wisdom, not only in information. And this is the only way to be attractive enough to adhere to this kind of knowledge or truth. Otherwise, is something that remains separated. I can receive a lot of information, but my life in the general, in the other part of the life that is outside of my job or my studies, is separated. There is no unity in life. Life is divided. And there are a lot of people who can be successful at the same time in his personal life is a disaster. And this break in the middle of the eye is a sign that there is something that is not working at all. And this is a challenge for us. Are we open to recognize what is happening in our life or in the life of a lot of people? So what does mean for us as students, as teachers, as human beings, as other people, to recognize that there's something that is not working? Because otherwise we can keep offering the solution that is the origin of what we are living now, this break in the middle of the eye. And without solving this, there is no joyful life. Because truth and happiness, or truth and beauty and truth or joy are separated.
Some of this is very relevant, of course, to the particular season of the Christian year in which we are, because it seems to me that all of this makes sense in the light of and in connection with the resurrection of Christ and the gift of the Spirit. We can't say the life of Christ is an event in the past which we remember and talk about. Mm-hmm. The life of Christ is a reality which we encounter and absorb in the community, in the sacrament, in the gift of the Spirit. It's never arm's length. So all of this depends, I would say, on a belief in the resurrection. But without that, Christian faith does become a set of statements. If Christ lives, gives the Spirit, acts in the Spirit in the church, then the beauty and the truth and the life are there, or are here now. And that's our good news. But I was thinking also about this break that you spoke of in the eye, and where you began that last response part of what we're saying is that to be dependent, to be receiving from God, is good news, not bad. The good news for us is God saying to us, you're not God. And we rejoice, because we don't have to be God. All we have to be is creatures, which is what we're made to be, and that's all right. And it made me think of how the very beginning of sin in the Bible is the devil whispering in the ears of the first human beings, you're not God. Isn't that a problem? And the first human beings, oh, yes, perhaps we ought to be God. And the world falls apart, and continues to fall apart, because the devil continues to whisper in our ears, your problem is that you're not God. Whereas our problem is that we're not human, that we're not creatures. And that's what we have to come to terms with, I think.
This is very, very important, because all of the attempts of the mystery of God is to convince us that to be dependent is a gift. And how can he convince us? The only way is the experience again, because only with somebody fall in love can recognize that this dependence is not a new slavery, that the other is a gift, and that without him or her, I cannot be so happy, I cannot be so fulfilled. So, if Christianity is not this kind of experience, no, that through Christ became man, the first two that met him became so fascinated that they came again the next day to look for him, because they couldn't live without him, because his presence was the better gift that they had received. It's only in a friendship, in a relationship with him, that dependence became something to be loved, not something from being detached or from defending ourselves. And this is all the issue of, if Christianity is not some present event, as you were saying, with the resurrection, is Christ cannot generate people in which the other non-Christian can see that to be with him or with her is a gift and not something to be detached, to be separated, something that can manage our freedom. That's as a gift for ourselves. It's impossible, because at the end there is like an image that we have of our life, that we can really be ourselves only as individual people without any link. This is the way of thinking our freedom. Freedom is not to have any link with anybody. But this is against our experience, because when we fall in love, this statement is collapsing, because only in the relationship with somebody can I fulfill plenitude that otherwise it would be impossible for me to grasp, to arrive. So, and all the mystery of Christianity is this, that the mystery became man to put in the middle of the reality some attractive present that can be feel like the best thing that happened in our life. Because only if Christ becomes so crucial for us, we can overcome the mentality that dependence is something from which we need to defend ourselves. But we need to overcome the mentality in which we are now, because what happened with Kant? The dynamo Kant said that we can have this kind of values that we can convey, that we try to convey. We cannot know this kind of value without the gospel. But now that we can recognize this because of the gospel, we can recognize only with reason. We don't need a presence of Christ through the Spirit living now to be attractive to us. So, this is the challenge that this mentality is for every Christian in the present. Because we have reduced at the end Christianity to a set of rules that we can adhere, no, to be Christian. But this is not enough to reawaken all the joy, all the attractiveness, all the fascination, to be interested and to feel dependent as a gift, as a good thing for everybody. So this is the opportunity to understand what Christianity is about. Because what the image of Christianity that many things we are dealing with is something that is a reduction. And many people in the present is away from Christianity because this reduction of Christianity is not interesting for them. Not even for Christians, because the secularization of the world is increasing because of many Christians are not interested in this kind of Christianity. Or we're rediscovering what Christianity is about in such a way, something real, present, that the resurrection of Christ generates a human being that can be feel like a wood for my life. Otherwise, what is the interest to become part of the Christian community? It's only another burden to add it to the life that we have enough burden to add another one. Only it's belonging to the Christian event in the Christian community is filled as something desirable, as something crucial for living, for the meaning of life. Can Christianity be interested, have a chance, according to the Pope Benedict? Because when he was asked, Christianity has some chance in this world, has a chance because his Christianity corresponds to our heart, to the expectation of our heart. But we need to meet this Christianity not in a reductive way, but in a alive, fascinating way in which I can decide. I was received a letter yesterday for a student at a university in which she described how a companion was shocked by the presence of this friend. And in a moment, she recognized the happiness of this girl. And he decided to become more close to her. So it's only when somebody met another one in which he can see what he is looking for, incarnate, not as an idea, not as some kind of something very, very far away, but really incarnating somebody. I want to see like you. I want to be with you, to participate to this happiness. So it's only in such a way that we can overcome this image that dependence is a means for our freedom. It's the fulfillment of our freedom. It's the contrary. But only can be overcome not with a reasoning, but with an experience. Because it seems like a contradiction. But when we can see in our life, when we fall in love, or when we meet somebody in which we can see what we are looking for, and we don't know how to grasp, how to that, but it's before us in somebody, we decided to be with him or with her, to participate in this newness. And this is the challenge of Christianity today.
Just one brief comment on that, and then perhaps we might open up for questions. But one thing which struck me as you were speaking there was about the nature of Christian ethics. How, for a Christian, the ethical imperatives, the ethical patterns that we have to live out are not things that are imposed upon us. They are the life we have received living in us. Mm-hmm. Why do we seek to stand alongside the poor? Why do we affirm the value of every life from conception to death? Why do we resist violence or injustice? Why do we seek for generosity and forgiveness? Not because we are told to do it,
yes,
but because we can't imagine our own integrity, our own wholeness, without letting that divine life we have received live in us. So so often argument about these matters in public is useless, because we're standing in different places, we don't see the same thing. And the invitation is always, well, maybe if you stood here, perhaps you'd see what we see. But to invite people to stand here, we have to look happy. We have to look as if we were alive. That's the challenge. But maybe there are questions and comments from our audience who've listened patiently so far. So may I invite questions? How long have we got?
15, 20 minutes.
15, 20 minutes? Very good.
I have a question. I'm puzzled really by the choice of title. It seems ambiguous to me. Is beauty something that disarms people, or are you trying to disarm beauty to stop it doing something?
Well, the title is rather different in Italian, of course.
It was a matter about the title, because in Italian it's unarmed beauty.
Disarm.
Disarmed.
Bellezza desarmata.
Because it's not something that is aggressive, no?
Right.
It's something that we can see in Christ. According to St. Paul, Christ lived his divinity to become man. No? The power of the divinity to become man. And the Son, he entered in the world as a little child. And this was the beginning of disarming others, no? Of disarming us, because we were fascinated by his disarmed beauty. But in English was a battle what the real translation of the Italian title. But my personal meaning was disarming, but according to the expert, it was not adequate for the meaning in English.
I think that's a pity.
Americans.
I think it's a pity because
It's a pity.
essentially the title. I read the title in Italian as Defenseless Beauty, which I think says what's important in the argument. But they've been asking me. Who else would like to? Yes, one and then two.
Yes, I'm interested in this idea of, as it were, sort of the Christianity, Christian legacy being uninteresting. So I think there's kind of a grave temptation, which we've seen many times, of trying to make it entertaining, gilding it, or trying to kind of. And the problem is that, if you imagine if we're listening on someone's kind of conversation, they talk about their friends and their family and who they love, who they like, and who they hate. It's not interesting to us. And why? Because we don't know these people. It's not important to us. But when we do know them, and we have a relationship, suddenly these things are of the greatest importance. And what's the kind of dull gossip of a neighbour becomes kind of fascinating substance of our lives. And I think the problem is it's not how to kind of make it more entertaining, because Christian education has been more or less entertaining, and it always will be. But how to make it important to people, how to connect people, how people to see not simply the form, but the substance as something that is necessary. It's not something that they might have to be seduced or persuaded into, but something that they start hunting for, and seeking for, and desperately longing for. Like, the sort of hordes of middle-aged peasants in the Middle Ages desperately beating down the doors of the church, going thousands of miles.
This is the question, what is the substance? And the substance is something that somebody can see before him. In the life or in the person he has before him. There is no other. And this is the way in which the mystery became a man. There is no title, there is no Hollywood image when they met first time, Christ. But they were so attracted by his humanity, by his gaze to the others. When he entered in Zacchaeus' house, and when he looked at sinners, and looked at persons who were ill. So, what is happening? That he put a way of living life that people were attractive. This is our question today. Only if we can put in the reality in the middle of the daily life, in the job, in the family, or in the neighborhood, or in the office, a kind of humanity like this. Not because we are without fault, or without any limits, but with all the limits, but we can convey something that is beyond the limit, because it is a way of reflecting Christ's glory, Christ's beauty, that is almost spite of us, spite of our limits, because it's so different, this kind of joy, this kind of happiness, this kind of peace, this kind of way of approaching all the difficulties of life, all the issues. When somebody comes every day to his work, joyful, it's something so unusual. It's a miracle. And people ask me, why are you so happy? Why are you so joyful? You can see the same limit that everybody of them have. But he has something that is different. So, what is the origin of your joy? How can I become like you? This is the only way. Not that we can reproduce Christianity only speaking about Christianity or speaking about the truth. No. The truth is living in our faith, is living in our joy, is living in the way we are taking care of people, or be interested in them, or have a meaning when the suffering appears in life, or when somebody died. No? A friend of mine told me the last week that one Muslim was struck by the fact that he attended a funeral. A funeral is like another funeral. All people died, and there are different kinds of funeral. The Muslim had the funeral, you can say, Christian had another funeral. The same thing, or the same marriage, or the same class, or the same. And he was shocked by the fact that in the Muslim funeral, according to his experience, was always a suffering, a cried out, everything like it. He was at peace, at the end a joyful moment, that he was struck. It's the same event, a human event, somebody died. But the way in which people live the same human event can convey the difference. Not added something, because at the end, if we can speak about Christianity, and when somebody died, we leave the dead like the other one, what is the difference? There is no difference. The difference appears in the daily life, in the life that is sometimes stressful, sometimes hard to live, something that is boring. In this moment is what we can see, if there is somebody present in our life, that we can live the same particular circumstance in another way. And this is not, it cannot be something always for the past, but something in the present that makes our experience of this particular moment different from the other one. But this crisis cannot be only a set of rules or a set of statements or a doctrine or a ethics. It's not. If when somebody has the experience that the presence of somebody in our life makes everything different. When somebody falls in love, when he arrives or she arrives to the workplace, people ask, what is happening to you? Are you in love? They don't know nothing, but they can recognize that somebody has happened. It's not only reading a book, a novel of love, or watching a film is not enough. Or attending a set of conference about love is not enough. Only an event in which a person becomes so crucial for my life, the other, sometimes for myself, can recognize like the origin of the change we have received, we are living. And this is what Christianity can convey if Christianity is lived as an event.
Got one more question here. I think we made two questions. To take two more questions then. You've been waiting here.
So my question is on the relationship between beauty and truth. So I understand that beauty derives from truth, but I can also think of examples in which true things that have happened in the history of humanity or even my personal life, it's very tough to derive beauty from. So how do you explain that? And is there a fallacy in my logic, or are we giving to the words beauty and truth different meanings?
That's the question. What is truth and what is beauty? No? St. Thomas Aquinas said that the beauty, the resplendence of the truth. So, glory in the gospel is the truth, but the truth as a beauty. No? So, the question is, many times we can apply truth without beauty, allora is not attractive, or beauty empty of the truth, and it's not enough, because we can see somebody who is beautiful, but it's not that because there is it's empty. It's not enough to be apparently beautiful without nothing behind. So the only real link is when we can see beauty and truth together, because it's what is attractive. And we can see that many apparently beautiful things are not resisting the time. And after a while we became bored. So even when what we are speaking about truth or about beauty has to be verified, because many times we use this word according to the common mentality, but not by the real truth, but the real beauty. And this is the verification that we need to do. Otherwise, many of the truth that we have here are not truthful enough, no, to resist the challenges of the history. Many times we think that communism was considered a truth for millions of people. How come so many people can consider this as a truth? It's a fact. But this image of truth can be verified in history. This can resist the past of the history, the challenges of the history, all the challenges that this kind of truth can be before. This is the question. The same with the beauty. Many times we, instead of starting from experience, we use an image to define truth and to define beauty. But only when you can start from experience, we can overcome the risk of attributing the truth to something that is not truth, and beauty that is not beauty. And for this reason, we need to be involved in our experience, because it is very difficult to to this, to say that somebody who loves me, if I am verifying that it's not love. It's very difficult to be confused. If somebody is beating you, it's very difficult that you can interpret this as a love. It's in experience. When it's revealed the nature of what we are living. And in this, you are starting from experience. From this experience, you cannot use the word love. The same with truth, the same with beauty, the same. The reality, as we said before, is revealed only in experience. And many times we prefer to use the common mentality instead of starting from experience. And for this reason, many times we make a lot of mistakes, because instead of dealing with the reality through experience, we are following the image of the common mentality that many times is not true.
We have one more brief question. Any? Very short?
Sure.
And short reply.
I personally, I'm a non-conformed person. I'm very drawn to faith, but I'm non-conformed because I find that organized religion lets me down and lets humanity down. I was deeply touched by Christianity when I was in Palestine, and I use the word Palestine because it is Palestine. I was in Galilee, which is in political territory known as Israel, and I was in the company of Palestinian Christians who spoke of Jesus as though he was alive now, because he was part of their lives, part of the history of their lives and of their families, time out of mind. And yet the modern world has turned its back on the Palestinian people, whether they are Christians or Muslims, and just treats them like they are in the way of this democratic entity. And I am very disturbed by a Christianity that does not stand up for people who are being abused, oppressed, murdered, massacred, denied electricity and water in the name of Donald Trump says, oh, I am a Christian. I have a magnificent nephew in the United States. I love him dearly. He's tall, he's handsome, he's well educated. He's an evangelical Christian, and he will not talk about anything about what goes on in the world. In the Bible it says, and he quotes the Bible, and he says, it's all in God's hands. And he will not talk about what is happening to humanity here and now. He is a Christian, but he will not apply his Christianity to the real world. And I think that until Christianity starts talking really and substantively about the real world, you're going to lose followers, and you're going to have people like me who want to believe, but stand outside and stay non-conformed.
We can, even Christians, can live Christianity ideologically. And this is what we are denouncing, is our ideological way of living Christianity. This is not Christianity, it's our ideological image of Christianity. And we need to verify in life what Christianity is about, because this kind of Christianity, I don't have any attraction for this kind of Christianity that you are describing. No? So everybody needs to verify in their own experience what Christianity is. Because it's impossible to be in a context, Palestinian or United States or whatever, or England or Spain or Italy, that cannot be influenced by the environment we are living our faith. For this reason, we need to be helped again and again and to convert what Rowan Williams said before. If we are not trying to overcome this kind of mentality at the end we can live Christianity in an ideological way. And this is a challenge that we need to look at this and to deal with it. Because for this reason, the church said that the Christianity is always in conversion. The church is always in reformation. We cannot say we are living in such a way that we don't need to change. Many times we can use Christianity only as ideological theory.
If I could just add a quick comment to that. I was having lunch today with a number of American friends, all of them Christians, all of them deeply embarrassed by the evangelical Christian support of Donald Trump. And that's part of the difficulty, I think, of the church being an event in human history, a set of human relations. You're very often associated in people's minds with those who seem to have forgotten what the faith is about. And living with that difficulty, that embarrassment, is one of the things about living in the church. But, sorry, I just also mention, I had to declare an interest, so to speak. I'm the chair of trustees of Christian Aid, which is the aid and development branch of the British churches, which continues to work and has 100 million a year turnover for not only for the poor and the marginalized, but also in advocacy and attempting to stand with Palestinians, among others, with the indigenous peoples of Latin America, and trying to make it something more than ideological. It's a challenge which comes to us day by day, which we frequently fail, and it's important to hear just how much we fail from those who are looking at us.
Let me say, I am deeply touched. I've been touched by this amazing community in Cambridge, Comunione e Liberazione. I know all these magnificent Italians who believe their faith is deep in them, and they go out and they distribute food to people who don't have food, and they help one another, they stick together. I am deeply touched by them, and I am moved by them, and I am impressed by them. And Papa Francesco is a tribute to humanity, and he is a light to the world. Somehow, if we can make it more ripple out and people start caring about fellow human beings and not say, oh, are you a Christian? I'll help you if you are.
Well, there's our agenda. Father Leon, thank you so much for introducing this discussion. Thank you all for being here, and I think there are some refreshments available afterwards. Thank you very much.